I wanted to make this audio because this is my health and wealth page, and I think that health in itself is a very, it's a very encompassing discussion, because in a lot of cases, when people think about health, they think about, like, you're either sick or you're well, but it's not always just physical. It could be mental. It could be what some people refer to as spiritual. Some people look at it as emotional. Energy, a state of being. The conditions of living. It all, to me, it all encompasses health. Not just food, clothes, food and air and water. So, you have to be careful, because ultimately, what better way is it to, it's just like when you think about cancer, right? Cancer doesn't attack from the outside, right? Actually, cancer cells actually start off as healthy cells. It's just that those cells, due to various amount of reasons, can mutate, and they can take on unhealthy states of being. And at first they hide out. They in their baby stages, cancer cells actually are fed and nourished by healthy cells. Blood, oxygen, nutrients, right? And that's how it grows. It mutates. And it's because, why? Because the immune system in the healthy cells have not identified it as a threat. So it feeds, it camouflages itself, because it already knows the truth. And that's really what this discussion, pretty much was stemmed from, in terms of, there's a misconception that, everybody that's pursuing the truth, there's a misconception that just because somebody pursues the truth, speaks the truth, reads the truth, that they're of the truth, okay? Just because you pursue facts or you pursue truth, that doesn't make you a truthful person. It doesn't make you a righteous person. It doesn't make a person a truthful person just because they study the truth or they're in the pursuit of truth, because we're living in days of maximum deception. So they say that the best told lie is a lie that comes the closest to the truth. And the closer, it's just like, say if somebody was trying to counterfeit a diamond or something, or anything that was trying to be duplicated, that wasn't real. The first thing that would have to be studied is the real thing. Because if you're going to duplicate something and pass it off as if it's really real and authentic, then you would first have to master the reality of what the authenticity of whatever that which you are seeking to duplicate or to counterfeit is really made up of. Because such a person would be seeking to pass off, right, that which is not authentic, as if like it is authentic, right? So that would require whatever it is that's seeking to be duplicated, the authentic version would have to be studied and mastered in detail. So it's the same thing with any truth, you see. And this stems from a conversation, an exchange that I just had. And I said, well, okay, let me make an audio, because, it's not that people don't know what's going on. Because in a lot of cases, people know what's going on, have studied what's going on, and in a lot of cases have really mastered the reality in terms of cause and effect and why things are the way that they are. But just what we got to come, what I'm seeking, what I'm seeking to get at is that just because somebody comes to know the truth, just because people come into the knowledge of certain information, that does not mean that they like the truth that they've come to find out. It does not mean that they favor it. It does not mean that they have accepted the responsibility of establishing a way of life that's centered around what comes with what they have learned. It in no way means that they have made that type of commitment. The only thing that means is that they have come to know what exists or what has existed. That's it. And just because they speak about it, just because they've read about it, just because they write about it, just because they make a video about it, and just because they tell other people about it, right? Whether they wear a certain type of clothing or even if they seek to fashion themselves into the image of what they're talking about, that in no way means that they are really of that particular mindset. Because we're living in the days of maximum deception. So just like someone who would be seeking to duplicate a diamond or to duplicate anything that's authentic, in order for them to pass it off as authentic, it has to come as close to it as possible. So of course, they're going to become very well versed in that subject matter. But the sole purpose for them coming or seeking to become, a master or very well versed within the side of that subject matter is so that they can utilize that information to undermine the true and authenticity of whatever it is that they are seeking to pass off or to duplicate. And this includes way of life. So you got people who spend a lot of time studying various different types of information. And, they enter into discussions and they're shaping opinions and perspectives. And, they're passing themselves off as if like they're righteous people, or that they're upright people, or that they're striving for better, or, that they're of a certain ilk, or that they're of a certain caliber of person, or that they possess a certain amount of values. When ultimately, when it's all said and done, they may very well despise, right, the very subject matter or facts and truths that you see them ultimately spending the majority of their time studying and dissecting and debating about and having discussions about and shaping and fashioning themselves into this particular imagery, because the sole purpose for this may very well be to disarm those who are really sincere about that particular subject matter, who are really sincerely seeking to live out that way of life, who have truly embraced that information and that way of life as their sole foundation and purpose in life. Because what other way would they be able to get next to you or to them or whoever if they can't speak your language, if you can't identify with them through a physical appearance, right? If they don't know the verbiage, right? And if they don't seem to have or don't have some type of insider knowledge base in terms of knowing what to talk about, what to say, how to say, when to say, how to look, where to go, who to connect with, what to connect with, and pretty much, in an attempt to duplicate a model or an appearance or a verbiage or a delivery, that to someone who may very well not be well versed in these types of psychological games that people play with these types of implementations, these types of infiltrations, will not be able to pick up on it, because in a lot of cases people get caught up in what's coming out of people's mouths. But you got a lot of wordsmiths out here. You got a lot of people, just like on TV, who they can study a script and they can take on any type of personality and vibration and emotional delivery, that they have enough intellect to know how to make it believable, wherein they can present themselves in a certain way that to the unsuspecting person who is not aware of these types of implementations or manipulations would not be able to decipher the fact that, or be able to differentiate between the fact that this is an individual or individuals who are not what they appear to be, even though they speak a certain way, sound a certain way, and look a certain way. Because there's still that something that's missing. And I'm hoping that and trusting that those who were engaged in this conversation will revisit this and take the time out to think about what I'm saying, not just what I'm saying, but take what I'm saying and actually size it up against the reality of situations wherein you may have come to think or to believe that you have come to know the reality of who a person is, what they were about, only to come to find out that there was either more to them than meets the eye, wherein the imagery and the verbiage and the identity and the personality that was presented or projected on one level did not quite fit the reality in terms of what they ultimately ended up thinking, saying, and doing. You see, so you know, in a lot of cases, you know, people come to know other people in ways that are not really conducive with the reality of exactly who they're actually meeting in terms of the foundational being. Because it's very easy to present oneself in the light of being truthful, honorable, righteous, upstanding, a person of character, a person who's principled. Because in most cases, the average person is going to know that most people are going to gravitate towards a positive energy, a good energy, a compassionate energy, a energy that inspires. So naturally, that's what someone who was seeking to duplicate these attributes would study and seek to duplicate and seek to portray. Why? Because those are the tools that they would seek to use in order to disarm you, in order to gain your trusts, and to make you, or to have you believing that they are a good person. Because once they have accomplished that, then it makes it easier for them to get inside of your life, gain your trust, gain your loyalty, gain your support, influence your mind, right? When all the while they may not even really even care for you or what they're telling you or what they say that they're about. Because why? They're pretty much recreating you through themselves and bouncing you back. They're becoming your mirror, because they know that if they can mirror and bounce your reflection back to you, then you'll begin to see yourself through them or in them. Okay? Now, for whatever reason it is that they're seeking to do this, I'm sure that, that's really case sensitive, but this whole conversation came from someone that I know and interacted with in a discussion, was speaking about, pretty much that, guys who are, of a certain ilk, a certain value system that they possess would not go after certain types of women. But what I wanted to point out is that just because people appear not to like something or want something on the surface, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're still not interested. And it may very well be the so-called upright and the righteous person on the surface who may have an even deeper desire for what it is that they're actually saying that they don't have a desire for. You see what I'm saying? In terms of, the opposite sex, in terms of whether they have which way they choose to identify with, feminine energies that they may openly, say, well, they're not interested in this type of woman because of X, Y, Z, or how she presented herself, or, how she lives her life, or due to a lack of value or what have you. But that's in the light of day in some cases, because ultimately that may very well mean that just because a man says that he doesn't like a certain type of woman and he's seeking to try to portray himself in the light of day as if like he's righteous and he's upright and he possesses some sense of value, that may very well just be on the surface. Okay, that in itself may be a deception, because he may seek to portray himself as being of a certain caliber or of man who carries a certain amount of standards, but in the cracks and the crevices of his mind, okay, when you enter off into his fantasies, right, and you enter off into the recesses of the being, okay, the parts of the being that you can't see through wardrobe, conversation, and just off of a first glance, the very type of woman that he may bash openly on the surface in the public, who he may call distasteful, who he may say is lascivious or oversexed or oversexualized or what he may deem to be indecent. What I was seeking to convey with inside of the discussion was that in itself may be a deception, because the very thing that he shuns may be the actual very thing that he really truly desires. But he may just be of a certain intellect to know that that's something that he may not be able to openly display or to admit. You see what I'm saying? Or interact with or to pursue in the light of day. But if given the opportunity, right, to be with that same woman that he's openly saying that he would not have anything to do with, if in fact he could interact with that same type of woman who may very well cater, right, to a taste and a desire inside of him that he keeps locked away. If in fact he was able to interact with this particular fantasy in a way wherein it could not touch his well-constructed higher standards of values, if in fact he knew that he could indulge with inside of this lasciviousness and this hedonistic activity with this particular type of woman, the fact of the matter is if these desires exist within him, in the world that we are living in, he most definitely would. But he just would not want anybody to know about it. You see what I'm saying? But it doesn't mean that he still doesn't want it. And then you have those who may never pursue it. But it doesn't mean that they still don't want it, or that they don't think about it, or that they don't fantasize about it. You see what I'm saying? So what was the conclusion? The only self that one could know is yourself. You cannot look at a person, no matter how good they look, no matter how righteous they proclaim themselves to be, no matter what kind of value system they portray, no matter what they are saying, exists within them. At the end of the day, only you know what you know about yourself in terms of what's in you. You see what I'm saying? What you truly desire, what you truly like and dislike. Because just because you come to know about the truth, and just because you come to know what the truth is, that doesn't always mean that you are of that truth. It doesn't mean that you favor what you have come to learn. It doesn't mean that you are prepared to build your life around that particular truth. It just means that you know the truth. You came to know something that you did not know before, but you may very well despise it. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because you come to know about a certain reality, that makes you righteous. Because you may come to know about something that's truthful, but you may not have the desire to live that truth out. You may know that that's a higher ground, or that that's a higher principle, or that that's a higher value. But you may be happy where you're at within inside of your own value system right now. Now, it's not to say that you don't have the potential to grow and to change, but change is a process. Just because you read a book, just because you watch a video, just because you have one conversation or 10 conversations, that still doesn't mean that just because you've come to know about something that's of a higher principle and a higher value, that you are prepared or ready or even willing, or that you even desire to make that type of commitment that would propel you in the direction of going through such a transformation in your thoughts and your actions and your behavior. You see what I'm saying? So that was where this conversation stemmed from. That just because someone knows the way, knows the path, knows what's on the other side, knows right from wrong, or what others deem to be right and wrong, that in no way makes a person righteous. That doesn't make that person any better than somebody that doesn't know. Because at the end of the day, you will know people through their deeds, and not just their deeds. Because people can use deeds to also manipulate you into thinking that they're somebody that they're not, depending upon how well they have mastered their manipulations. And I point your attention back to television and acting, actors and actresses. You can sit there and you can watch a whole 2-hour movie, and if the actor and the actress have studied their scripts and mastered their crafts, right, from makeup to hairdos to shifting their frequencies and their energies to taking on an emotion of this character, a mental disposition to that's so believable that they have totally embodied this character in taking on their thought processes and their reality, no matter how fictitious these characters may be, which ultimately may be just a figment of somebody else's imagination, namely the writer, whoever wrote this script, right? And they hire actors and actresses to take on this reality, to manifest it, to bring it to life, to act it out in such a way with such professionalism to the point that people who are on the opposite side viewing this depiction and this presentation and this delivery, this choreography of this make-believe hypnosis of reality, which started off as something in somebody's mind, you believe it so much that it taps your emotional center, wherein you forget that it's just a movie or a show or a play, right? Or a drama, right? And what happens? In some cases, you get scared. You can be frightened. You can become so overwhelmed by emotion, wherein it inspires you to take a certain action, because you get so caught up in the characters and the life that they are portraying and the things that they are going through, the triumphs, the sorrow, the losses, the bittersweet, the rise and the fall, the conflict, them overcoming some type of struggle or obstacle in their lives, or something sinister, or whatever the plot is. You get caught up in it, in the hypnosis of this presentation, to the point where it can bring you to tears. Or it can remind you of something that happened to you inside of your own life. And it can inspire thoughts of what you should have did or what happened to you before, wherein you begin to connect with the characters on a personal level. People that you've never met before. So why am I saying this? What makes you think that if people get paid to do this, what makes you think that real actors and actresses are not walking around every day in your day-to-day life, hypnotizing you into believing that they are somebody that they're really not? And to go even further, how will you know when you are actually dealing with the real person and not dealing with the person that they are portraying themselves to be, the actor and the actress, the make-believe? Because whether you realize it or not, people can make themselves cry and not mean it. People can develop emotions and say, oh, I love you, and the intellect will allow them to feel you and what to do, what to say, what not to say, and to shape and mold themselves around your life, and to have you thinking that they really, really, really care about you, and ultimately they really don't. See? So before I get too deep off into this science here, because it is a real science. Hypnosis is real. There are real actors and actresses out here in everyday life. They don't gotta always be on TV. They're very well versed in what to say, what not to say, how to say. They know how to match your energies, to draw you in, to make you believe, to create a reality or realities for you to live in psychologically and emotionally, mentally, spiritually, economically, or whatever, wherein they construct whatever it is that they would like to construct in order for you to believe in it. And if you don't see it coming, then you will be living within inside of somebody else's script, somebody else's make-believe. And that happens all the time. And they show it to you on TV. They watch the Truman Show. He grew up on a TV set and he thought that the TV set was real. Until one day when he got older, he came into the realization that everything that he thought was real was actually make-believe. He was living on a TV set. Because it was an experiment. So before I digress, these are my conclusive statements for you to think about if you so wish to. Just because you pursue truth does not make you truthful. Just because you pursue righteousness and the knowledge of that which comes with such a pursuit, that does not make you righteous. Just because you step into the unknown, or what some consider the darkness, some call it the triple stages of darkness, whatever you want to call it, when you step outside of the box, wherever your pursuit takes you, you will not ultimately, or you ultimately will not become what you are pursuing until you actually become it, but through transformation, not through manipulation, not because you are seeking to prove it to other people, not because you are using the information as a device or as a method to get into other people's lives to get what you want for your own selfish needs. Okay? You will know when you have arrived, when what you are pursuing is that which you ultimately truly wish to be, for no other purpose other than the being in itself, because that is the ultimate value that you see. But anytime you are seeking to transform yourself for any other reason outside of the actual value of the transformation in itself, then you got to know that you is one of two things. You're either manipulating yourself, or you are taking on a manipulation so that you can manipulate somebody else for whatever reason you are seeking to do it. Okay? And the only way that you are going to know what's authentic out here in these days of maximum deception is you are going to have to go deeper inside of yourself, because if you don't know yourself, until you travel into the depths of yourself, you will not know the depths of other people and how deep things can really, really go. So if you have not broken ground within inside of your own internal processes of growth and development, if you come across a predator of the mind and of the soul who, for their own insidious reasons, have dug deeper off inside of their own human psyche to study human nature for the sole purpose of manipulating others, then anytime they bypass your internal experiences, they can take you to a place that you've never been before. And because you've never been there before, you won't know whether or not if you have ended up in the right place. Furthermore, you will not know whether or not if what you are in the presence of is actually authentic, because you have not authenticated yourself first. So you're not going to be able to know what to look for inside of somebody else through the process of deduction, because you yourself as an individual being, you have not explored yourself to those depths. So you don't know the process. So by you not knowing the process of your own growth and your own development, and by way of you being stunted within inside of your own growth and your own internal realities, because you have not explored every aspect of yourself, because despite popular belief, you are not just one person. You may have a foundation, but your energies, all of the energies and all of the facets of yourself, each represent a different personality, a different energy. You see what I'm saying? And you're constantly developing new ones through the experiences that you have through life every day. So if you're not really in tune with yourself on those particular levels, then chances are you may very well have already have been cultivated by spiritual predators, mental, emotional predators, manipulators who occupy your space. It could be your wife, it could be your husband, it could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be your cousin, it could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be your friend. It could be your colleague. But in most cases, it's not a stranger. And I'm going to tell you why. When you look at parasites, right? Where do parasites live? They live inside of your visceral. They feed off of what you feed off of. But you got to ask yourself, does a parasite eat you from the outside or from the inside? See, the parasite and the tapeworm is one of the oldest predators on the planet. Microscopic organisms that feed off of hosts. And you can learn a lot from them, even though they get a bad rap, and for good reason, because, they're not really healthy and good for you. But you do have healthy parasites and you have unhealthy parasites. But what I'm trying to get you to see is that it's the things that's closest to you that in a lot of cases have the most access to you to hurt you the most. And then you got to ask yourself, how did they get there? Because see, parasites have to get inside of your life. You see what I'm saying? So that they can reproduce and do what? Feed on you. And then in a lot of cases, you don't even know they're there. Why? Because you have yet to identify. And that's the whole mastery of what I'm telling you. See, a lot of times you pay attention to the things that you can see. But what about the things that you can't see? What about the things that go undetected? Look at cancer. Look at some of the most deadliest diseases. They've already been there in your life, feeding on you before you ever even come to realize, before your immune system picks up on it. Damage has already been done. So how do you prevent this from happening to you on other levels of life outside of just your physical health? You have to construct your life in a way wherein you become so in tune with your life, wherein you raise not just your alkalinity on a physical level, you have to raise your alkalinity on all levels. Your internal self-defense. You have to empower yourself so much to the point wherein these types of things, where you become impervious to these types of attacks. You see them coming before they get there. Why? Because that's what comes with self-mastery. So before you can master anything else in terms of human engagement, communication, psychology, energy exchange, sex, relationships, and, marriage, and all of these other, labels and all of these different types of interactions that humans, tend to occupy or participate in, you have to master yourself first. You see what I'm saying? Because if you don't do that, then chances are, I hate to tell you, you're not going to know whether or not if you're living inside of your own reality or someone else's fantasy that you have accepted as being your reality. You see what I'm saying? Because if you're living inside of a construct of somebody else's thinking and you're not even aware of it and you're treating it as if like that's the reality and that's the authenticity, that's the real deal, when in all actuality you're the only person that cares about it, but everybody else around you knows that you have been cultivated, then you got to ask yourself, where are you within inside of the scheme of things? And you could take this discussion and this science, and you can attach it and you can apply it to so many other deeper things. But I'm not going to go there tonight, okay? I had a very good discussion earlier, and it inspired me to share this on my page. Some may be able to relate, some may not, but it's for those who can. So, just something to think about. Start doing more checks and balances on what's going on in your life, what's going on, with those who help to occupy your life. And, don't be afraid to, ask yourself, real questions of why, what, when, how, where, and, just really, really come to really know yourself more and those around you. And ask yourself, why are these people here? Realistically, what do they really want from me? How did they get here? You see what I'm saying? Am I really dealing with the authenticity of what they're presenting themselves to be? And let the answers to those questions be the revelation in your life. Hopefully the answers are what they should be. But if they're not, then you got to ask yourself, are you really where you want to be in your life right now? So, it's just a little something to think about. So have a great night. Just something to get those juices flowing. But once again, everybody that's pursuing what they're pursuing doesn't necessarily mean that they like what they're pursuing or that they're of what they're pursuing. They may just be pursuing it and the authenticity of it to learn about it just so that they can duplicate it and get it as close to the authentic version as they can. Why? Because the best told lie is what? That which comes the closest to the truth. But if it's close to the truth and not the truth, then chances are it's not the truth. Peace and blessings.